So firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity to come along today. We've actually had quite a lot of interaction with the MRIs as we have been formulating the 10-year plan, and I'm delighted that as we've been rolling out some of our initiatives, we've also been able to invest in a whole lot of programs in the space. So Australia is at an important time of growth and change with innovation, and we heard about that this morning, across all sectors at the forefront. And our vibrant medtech, biotech and pharma research environment is absolutely world-leading and recognised. We're going to have a broader conversation about innovation, I expect, in 2018. There hasn't been a lot of oxygen to talk about it more recently, but it's up to us to actually talk about how innovation delivers substantial benefits to society's well-being and is key to solving some of our key problems and pressing challenges, and that the benefits of innovation often go well beyond economic benefits. The medical technology and biotechnology and pharmaceutical sector, and that's where our name comes from, is increasingly important and is a growing sector globally. Within Australia alone, it supports 48,000 jobs, and in fact we've just had the new data come in for this year, and that number has pleasingly gone up. It utilises in excess of $1.4 billion of public and industry spending on research and development. Australia is one of 3 biotechnology leaders when it comes to the number of publicly traded companies, company revenue and company market capitalisation. There's around 100 MTP companies that are listed on the Australian Stock Exchange with a combined market capitalisation of $85 billion, and we've just looked at those numbers again recently, and that's gone up to about $94 billion, and we'll be publishing some of that new data early next year. We also have a vibrant ecosystem of startups and established companies with approximately 50 multinational pharmaceutical companies here in Australia, and about another 400 to 500 biotech and medtech companies, taking us to just over 1,000 companies in the space, and we expect that number, with a number of the new initiatives with medical technology and digital health, that number will actually be higher when we report on that early next year. The sector generates about $4 billion in manufacturing exports, and it's worth about $4.4 billion gross value add. So that makes us the 10th biggest manufacturing export sector in Australia, so it's not to be sneezed at. And of course, medical research and the work that you guys do in the MRIs absolutely underpins all of this. Australia is acknowledged as a world leader in the medtech, biotech and pharmaceutical sector, and it's due to this thriving research and development environment. We contribute to 3% of the world's published biomedical research and have produced numerous global success stories: Cochlear, ResMed, CSL, Mesoblast, Nanosonics, etc. In the Scientific America's Worldview Biotechnology ranking of over 50 countries, Australia has jumped from 17th place in 2010 to hold one of the top 5 spots for the last 3 years. And we are keeping pace with the US, Singapore, Denmark and New Zealand. The Medical Technology and Pharmaceutical Industry Growth Centre, MTP Connect, of which I'm the Managing Director and CEO, was formed in November 2015 as part of the Federal Government Department of Industry, Innovation and Science initiative, the Growth Centre Initiative. And what they did there is they got a learned group of people that includes people like Andrew Liveris, Catherine Livingston, Carolyn Hewson and many others, and they said, okay, what do we need to do in 50 years to make sure that we can solve our problems of the future? And then we need to come back 10 years and really put some plans in place to deliver on some of that competitiveness and productivity. And so what they did was they established 6 growth centres, $250 million over a 4-year period. About 50% of the funding actually gets deployed out to the sector in project funds to address the constraints and barriers, and I'll speak a little bit more about that. And the other is operational expenditure, but also investment in sector growth projects to actually build capability. So the Growth Centre Initiatives is one of the federal government initiatives, but interestingly, it's not been set up as a fully government-owned entity. MTP Connect is an independent, not-for-profit organisation. It's distinct from government, and it's championing a sector-led approach to accelerate and boost the growth of medtech, biotech and pharmaceutical ecosystem in Australia. Our task is to seize the opportunities created by Australia's internationally renowned research to advise and advocate, to promote greater collaboration, alignment and engagement, to drive innovation, productivity and competition and establish Australia as an Asia-Pacific hub for the MTP companies, driving innovation so that we can continue to be world leaders in the field. Through extensive consultation with the sector, including early insights and feedback from AMRI, we've developed a 10-year sector competitiveness plan outlining a vision and a strategy to drive changes in 3 key areas. So the first is that we will have highly targeted actions to increase connectiveness and collaboration. We're very pleased to see that there's actually an increase in the number of publications that are joint publications between industry and research, and we've seen that also reflected in patents, and that's actually a very good thing. And I think the more collaboration we can drive between research and industry, the better. The second thing is our independent voice. So we provide an independent voice to provide support and shape policy and regulatory renewal, as well as, in some respects, balancing some of the funding directions. So many of you may not be aware, but we review all of the CRC, CRCP, some of the ARC, the Global Innovation Linkages and other grant programs. And we look at it very much from a competitiveness perspective and a commercial perspective. Is there commercial pull as well as academic push? Is there a true value proposition that will address a significant unmet medical need? And is there a high chance of success in that competitive landscape? We don't take paid membership from anyone. All right, so you can join MTP Connect and connect with the sector and get some updates and obviously get access to all the information we provide. But because we don't take paid membership from anyone, and our sector is well supported by a whole lot of industry organisations, it means that we're not considered a lobby group. And that gives us a different voice when we're in front of both federal and state government. And we've actually been able to fairly effectively use that in the last 12 months to actually drive some change in the sector and to drive more connection and collaboration. And the last thing I'll talk a little bit about is the funding we provide for targeted sector-led projects. So we had $15.6 million initially for the project fund. This is an investment fund that is not about investing in company A to get to the next value inflection point. It's very much about getting those big, bold ideas out from the sector itself. So what are the problems you're trying to solve? What is the capability you're trying to build? And then we will provide the matched cash funding. All right, so it was a competitive process, but we've now funded 35 projects across Australia, and that touches 330 entities across the country. And they're now, in the first round in 2016, we gave out 15 investments, and they're now starting to lead to some very interesting outcomes, which are actually really important for the productivity and competitiveness of Australia. Though we are recognised as a world leader in medtech, pharma and biotech due to our vibrant research environment, I think it was very clear when many of us read the Office of Innovation Science Australia audit earlier this year that while we've got very good research and world-class infrastructure and amazing researchers, we have a poor record of translation and commercialisation. And we do have a tendency to see research drained offshore for development, and this is acknowledged as a problem by the sector. Now, clearly there's been some great initiatives, and I'll talk about some of them. We heard about some of them this morning that are actually trying to address this, but there's always more to be done. There are a number of barriers to growth, including funding and focus, misaligned programs, too many programs. How do you keep track of them all? There's 130 different programs that touch our sector, and trying to navigate some of those. Which state program gets me federal government money? You know, it's I think we can get better alignment across those programs. We know we have a significant skills gap. We've not got a shortage of jobs, and we're not going to have a shortage of jobs in the future. We've got a shortage of skills. And so we are already finding difficulty in a number of roles in bioinformatics, in regulatory, in market access, commercialisation, business development, you name, virtually right across the spectrum we have skills shortages. The other thing is collaboration and commercialisation. So one of the things that often gets quoted is the OECD number. I'm not sure I really believe the way that that's not really apples and oranges when you actually look at how that's derived. And I think in our sector we actually are natural collaborators, and we do collaborate more than perhaps some other industries, because it's very difficult to take a product or service to market in our sector by yourself. I mean, a medical device is about $150 million and somewhere between 5 and 8 years. If you're trying to do a pharmaceutical, it's more like $2.4 billion, and it's somewhere between 12 and 15 years. But we do need to do this better, and I think you'll see in 2018 a number of programs that's going to demand more collaboration, and we know that we get better outcomes when we get research and industry together, and we define those problems and we have multidisciplinary approaches. The other thing that we face is the global supply chain. We're geographically a long way from everywhere, but we have a huge opportunity there because there's a whole lot of new industries that are coming through technology that actually, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. And in fact, if you can get the right minds together to solve the problem, you can take those solutions to the world. And more now we're tapping into that global supply chain, and that is giving us much faster translation and commercialisation. Regulation matters, as does policy, and we're a highly regulated environment, as many of you know, and new technology demands that we actually have adaptive regulation and regulatory renewal, and that's not always easy. So having talked about the constraints, let me talk about some of the mega trends that I actually think are incredibly important as you're thinking about your research and what we're doing together for the future. So we work very closely with futures groups around the world, including the futures group at CSIRO, and we looked specifically at 7 mega trends that are actually going to impact our sector over the next 20 years. And these trends are guiding our priorities and actions, but they're also providing guidance on focal points for our sector. And unlike some other programs, we are asked to pick knowledge priorities and sector priorities and areas where we do invest. So this guides this a little bit. There is a chronic burden with life expectancies increasing due to modern medical and pharmaceutical technologies, and we need to make sure that our healthcare system, which is very high calibre, is sustainable in the longer term. And with all of those new innovations, obviously it comes at an enormous cost to the public health system, and we're looking for new technologies to solve some of those problems. Personalised healthcare or precision medicine, as you'll sometimes hear it called, will provide targeted, best fit treatments for patients with better outcomes, driven by research advances such as 3D printing, precision medicine, medical imaging, etc. And this is providing an opportunity for us to develop and commercialise next generation systems. Consumers are very much the centre, and they'll become more so the centre of their healthcare, consumer control, where we're seeing empowerment of patients to actively track and manage their healthcare. Australia could become a preferred region for developing and testing the next generation of medical technologies, which would substantially benefit the economy. And I think many of you are aware of My Health Record. In fact, I'm almost tempted to ask how many of you have My Health Record in the audience, because I might just ask who has My Health Record. And you're the informed audience. God help us when we go out and talk to the lay public. All right, I encourage you to get involved and find out more about it. The digital evolution of data processing and exchange, given the massive amount of data that's generated daily, and ensuring that we've got standardisation, security and data integrity. We're seeing a change in the integrated care models to better address the context and specific needs of patients, and that's a challenge to the hospital system and what we're going to do in terms of ongoing continuous care. Developing markets in need of healthcare solutions with very specific requirements such as low cost and point of delivery, and we've often hear about frugal innovation in India. Australia has an opportunity to leverage our high quality production advantages and develop innovative, cost effective solutions. And the last one just to touch on is global biosecurity, and it's a highly important topic. We've got recent pandemics and increased treatment resistance creating unpredictable threats. We need to maintain a strong advanced manufacturing and research capability in Australia for biosecurity, and we are well placed to do that, but we do need to make those investments to make sure that we can combat these risks. With guidance from the sector and through harnessing opportunities such as these trends, our vision is to retain at least current levels of planned expenditure and R&D, but also to achieve greater commercialisation success, resulting in more products reaching proof of concept and early stage commercialisation. Only 3% of our intellectual property that's generated in universities is actually pulled through for commercial indications, and we need to increase the number of medium to large-sized companies with late-stage product successes and maximise the value of that IP. As we know from the recent audit, we have world-class infrastructure and research and invest in knowledge creation in Australia, but we need a renewed focus on knowledge transfer and knowledge commercialisation. When we actually pulled together with consultation with many of those in this audience, but also many thousands of people around Australia, we came up with 7 sector growth priorities, and I won't go through these in any huge detail, except to note that when we're reviewing grant applications, we are looking for alignment around these knowledge priorities. So are they things that truly have commercial pull, that meet unmet needs, that might be a digital solution, that actually will require investment in clinical trials, that do touch Asia and maybe support additive or advanced manufacturing. So keep that in mind as we're looking at your grant applications. We're really looking for commercial pull, not just academic push. And if we get this right, what does this look like? We're asked, as you always are when you're doing work for government, to actually come up with a bit of a size of the prize. But of course, it's not just the work that we do that actually feeds into this, it's the entire ecosystem. And so from our perspective, through our consultation research, we believe that if we focus on those priorities and others, we can achieve our vision of success, which would increase GVA, gross value add, by 3.2 billion per annum, create 28,000 new jobs through the years up to 2025. However, we all have a part to play. So what we're doing to get there and how we're doing it, I just want to talk a little bit more about some of the tools that we're actually deploying to make some of this happen. So I mentioned before the MTP Connect project fund. So this is federal government money that we're deploying on behalf of the federal government. It's a matched program, but in fact when we called out for the big bold ideas, we in fact found that the sector responded more than matching it. In fact it was a ratio of well over 2 to 1, and we were thrilled to have 35 very high calibre programs around the country to address some of those barriers. And I'm pleased to say that a number of the AMRI members were also included, and they included the Garvan, Murdoch Research, Children's Research Institute, St Vincent's Institute of Medical Research, Translational Research Institute, Walter and Eliza Hall, Telethon Kids, and the Australian Regenerative Medicines Institute. So we're delighted that you guys were actually able to get some funding through that program. One program that I did want to alert you to, I shall go back one, alert you to was the Bridge program. So we have just completed that, and I was really good to hear about the collaboration approach in Victoria just a few minutes ago, because we decided that we would try and get all the pharmaceutical companies to work together, not a mean feat. So we went to them and they said, look, we've got skills gaps. We can't find the right people to come into our organisations, and we desperately need skills in all of these areas. And we were very aware that a number of the pharmaceutical companies have fantastic toolkits and training packages. And in the case of Merck, they had spent close to $4 million with Yale University developing a training package on product development and commercialisation. Now, they could not deploy that or sell that through an entity to educate it through a training organisation, but what they could do was gift it. And we knew that all around the country, with all of our multinationals, that they all had similar systems, training packages that we could delve into. So we got a consortium of 15 of those multinationals, 3 universities, Medicines Australia, their industry organisation, AVCAL and some others, to actually set up some technical, practical skills training on pharmaceutical commercialisation. And that was through both direct training and direct exposure to industry practitioners. And it included internships in industry, including internships overseas. So the idea was to actually have a national program. We launched it in June 2017, and in fact the first cohort of 101 participants have just completed that course last week. And right across the board, we collected a whole lot of metrics on that program, and on all measures, there was a positive shift. And so we're now continuing to run that program. Expressions of interest are now open for the 2018 round. It is a competitive application process. We're running it through QUT, but if you Google the Bridge program, you'll find it, or you can find the details on our website. But certainly if you've got early to mid-career researchers who have an interest in perhaps understanding some of the roles that might exist in the pharmaceutical industry, it might be one of interest to them. I also just want to give another example of a program that we've given some money to in the last round, where we actually wanted to make sure that people could get access to some of the INCRIS facilities. And so we've put a voucher program in. This is a bit of a pilot. If this works, we intend to broaden this out. But it was a scheme that was funding vouchers to support medtech R&D, specifically getting access to the MMRF, and sort of trying to get industry to better understand the product offering that's there and to encourage them to use those amazing facilities. So we've given, that's a $500,000 project, we've given $250,000 to that, and it's there if you want access to analytical tools and expertise around capability. So please keep that one in mind as well. Another one I will mention, and this consortium members here were Monash, CSIRO, CCRM, Canada, Cell Therapy, St Vincent's Institute of Medical Research, and the industry organisation AusBiotech, where we actually created an Australian hub for commercialisation of regenerative medicine. And this will be important as this is one of the areas, regenerative medicine is one of the areas that is a knowledge priority for us in Australia. And so we've now got a group together working in a really collaborative way to drive some of the commercialisation, translation and commercialisation of those programs, which I think is quite important and exciting. I've spoken about the Bridge program. And the last one I just wanted to touch on was, up till now, all of our money has actually come through the DIS, with industry, innovation and science. But pleasingly, because we'd had such success and such fantastic collaboration and good projects coming forward through those projects, we're now starting to have some of the MRFF money flow through MTP Connect. And so the first one off the block is the Bio MedTech Horizons Fund. This is quite a small fund, but very targeted fund, $5 million with money coming from MRFF, designed to be 5 grants, really taking cutting-edge ideas in precision medicine and 3D anatomical printing. The timelines are tight, they're not mine, they're Minister's Hunt, and I know it's a terrible time if anyone's planning to take any time off Christmas. The closing date for expressions of interest, and it's a bit like the NHMRC form, I think we only need 700 words. So it's almost like that 2-pager all of those years ago. We only need 700 words as an expression of interest. Then there's a fairly robust selection review process, and then we'll be asking those that are shortlisted to actually provide a more extensive plan, a research plan and development plan, and that needs to be submitted on the 15th of January. And we're hoping that that money will actually start to flow in February. We're quite hopeful, and in fact we're quite confident, and I think it was in Ian's slides, where we think there'll be other more significant amounts of money that will also be flowing through MTP Connect into the sector through some of these programs. So watch this space and make sure you're signed up so that you get the heads up early about when these grants come out. I think we've covered off a couple of these today, and I'm not going to repeat what obviously Anne has talked about within HMRC and the terrific program that is there. I think we've had a good summary of the MRFF from Ian. I did want to touch briefly on the Biomedical Translation Fund. This is a $500 million fund that has been deployed through 3 venture capital companies in Australia, so One Ventures, Brandon Capital and Biosciences Managers, and they're starting to make their first investments in the sector. $250 million came from the federal government, $250 million came from the private sector. We obviously have the CRCP program and CRC program. We've seen the announcement today of those CRCPs, and in fact the medtech sector has done quite well out of that. We've got the new CSIRO Innovation Fund, $200 million that's going into the sector, and you would have probably been seeing some of the communication around that. We're waiting for the NCRIS facilities information, and I'm sure Alan's working very hard on that. But there are many other programs, the Global Innovation Strategy and the Global Innovation Linkages, the ARC linkages and many of the other ARC programs. So plenty of support and plenty of money going into the sector. We need to make sure that it's properly deployed and that it's really effectively used, not just on that fantastic knowledge creation, but also translation and commercialisation. I might stop there.